God, the energy.
I
Yeah, I
just
was
I just started recording.
this. Oh, um,
Yeah, go right ahead. Take your
hold
time.
on. Let me just write this down real quick, and then we'll do our intro. Oh my God.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm already getting songs.
Oh my God. This is off to the races.
I know.
And,
So I'm thinking it might help this come through anyway. If you want, so I don't forget it, I
and
can
what
just start singing and then we'll put it together.
I also have to tell you, I got woken up by Samael requesting a certain song from you this morning or on a topic, and I have not even gotten to tell you about it. I should have mentioned it on the Marco in the car. I
Oh
got
my goodness.
awakened by him today, already talking about how you were going to be singing and he was looking forward to it. And I was like, dude, I am not awake. And he said he wanted a song of teaching. And I said, aren't all of the songs kind of about teaching? And he said, no, I want a song of my teaching. And I was like, okay, I will let her know and we'll go from there. So if you can keep the idea of a teacher and a student in mind, perhaps someone imparting wisdom or technique to another. I don't know how you would do that.
I After I sing this, because the tune is so clear that I feel like that may be what it is. But I have to share then with you what I just experienced at the end of the Reiki session that I just finished doing before I came in here, because I was essentially singing to a group of little children.
Oh my God. And I should also tell you that on the way to get my massage this morning, you had left me a Marco talking about children embracing toys and spirits in dolls, like attaching themselves to dolls. And Samael went off on this whole thing about children being closer to the remembering source and how they can see souls much better than we can, and that that's what imaginary friends often are, and this whole thing on children this morning. But I haven't even got, I feel like I should go, welcome to Mystical Musings. We haven't been together in a few weeks, and we already have channeled song and Samael talking our ears off before we've even introduced ourselves. It's chaos here, people. We'll try to chill
We
it
are
out.
off to the races.
So, hello,
Grab
everyone. Welcome back. Boy, do we have a lot of stuff to tell you. And more stuff is happening right now before we've even gotten a chance to say hello. Apparently, Samael thinks Jen runs some sort of top 40 music from the Beyond radio station, and he's putting in requests.
Yeah. So
I don't.
grab a hat and hold on to it.
So, what we're going to do, because Samael is already talking and Jen is already getting song, she's going to go ahead and sing. I am going to try to get all this down on paper. I'm already up to a page and a half before we even said go, and then we'll let the dust settle.
All right, I will do that.
No rest for the wicked.
Oh I'm hoping I didn't cut it too short, but I felt like that song could possibly go on for the entire rest of the day. So if he says, no, you're not done, keep singing, I will. But
I think at the end of this paragraph, he's going to have to take a breath simply because my mind is exploding with the stuff he's talking to me about. So
I was like, oh, well, nope, there's more song. May as well get it out now.
you said you told our listeners to hold on to their hats.
Indeed.
I would like everyone to buckle the safety belt, including the shoulder strap, and possibly also glue your boots to the floor.
Arms and legs inside the vehicle at all times.
Because the vehicle is going to be going places today. Um, I feel like I'm just trying to sort of like ground myself. I just had the most wonderful massage and I walked out going, I'm so grounded and centered. This is fantastic. And now it's like I got hit by a bus, like right off. Um, so gentle listeners, we should probably I want to sum up if we can. We did not have a podcast last week. Jenn was involved in caring for someone in a family emergency and had to leave town. And there was also a lot of really unusual things happening here in Virginia as well. And I may have to fill you in on some of those. So we haven't seen each other in a while, but we have been Marcoing and leaving messages. Basically, we've both been hit with a tidal wave of lessons and energy and some really new experiences. For those of you who've been listening to us for a while, it sort of seemed like we started the podcast with, hey, we're going to get on and talk about metaphysical topics. And then very quickly heard that we were actually being moved along towards a specific goal or purpose, some things that uh, in our own spiritual development hurdles we were supposed to cross, and there's some work we had to do, but we weren't quite sure what it was. It has been coming roaring into focus over the last few weeks. And one of the things that has become very apparent is that a lot of the things we were sort of finding out about on the podcast and going, that's really interesting. Here comes the evidence and the practice of these theories that we've been sort of being pushed towards. And now I almost feel like it's a whole new world. Like I feel like our last podcast was in another lifetime. And now here it is, we're doing the work. a lot of really interesting information is coming through, but at such a pace that Jen and I are frantically looking for the water wings so that we don't drown in it. You heard Jen talking about trying to suck an elephant through a straw when talking about the divine. We got a whole herd of elephants here, and we've got a coffee stirrer that we're working with. Samael is speaking to me right now as though all of you know what's going on. I had, over the last few weeks, some life-changing experiences with people who have crossed out of this world with the dead, basically. And it appears that all of Samael's gentle nudging finally ended up to him putting a nice big boot on my butt and kicking me into the deep end of the pool. So in recent weeks now, instead of just being able to hear Samael, I am now hearing all sorts of disembodied, lovely entities around me that want to express their opinions to someone who they realize can hear. And I am under Samael's guidance trying very hard to learn very quickly what I'm supposed to be doing to aid them. So if you get a note of that as I'm reading you things that Samael is saying, it's because he is my lab supervisor and I am suddenly doing graduate work. And the other thing that came out of these experiences, we've been out the power of story and song and dance and creating art to create sacred spaces. And, we're going to be teaching at the Fertile Ground Gathering next week, doing a workshop where we do this together live. And I'm beyond excited. And it does not shock me at all looking back that all of these experiences that I'm having are coming right before we do that. Sort of like, get up, dust off, kid, here you go. And one of the experiences that I had a few days ago with attempting to help a distressed, disembodied soul. I would have thought that I needed to sit down as a witch and get my four corners up and set up a whole ritual space and, all the stuff that I've been doing for 30 odd years. But in reality, I had a recording of Jenn singing and it instantly created a sacred environment as I repeated her singing this song. All of that became unnecessary, which was good because I was dealing with kind of like an emergency situation and I didn't have any of those items with me. And if it had not been for her voice on that recording, I I wouldn't have had a consecrated space. I would not have had an environment where a soul that was so distressed it wasn't able to listen, was able to speak to me. I could hear her. I was able to calm her down. I recruited two other living, wonderful people to help me. And we actually got her to a place where we could dramatically improve the situation that she was in. And I walked out of that going, all the stuff we've been talking about and then saying, we're going to try this, we're going to put this into practice. I have the evidence now. It happened right there in front of me. That music facilitated that entire thing happening and essentially was the pathway that cleared everything open so that I could understand what my life's work is supposed to be in this incarnation. So I can never say enough thank yous, Jenn. And so keep all that in mind as we talk, guys.
And that track is actually what we released as our kind of last episode, as they tied you over while we were sort of going through all the things we were going through. So it's the Sacred Soothing that is actually posted as the episode of like bonus material before this one, if anybody wants to hear that. And it's also on repeat on my website. So you can click on that, and which I realized I needed to tell you, Tava, also because she had to keep going and rewinding it from that podcast. But
yeah,
if you go onto the Willow Ridge Reiki site under Healing Sound, it's one of the ones there. So I put it there so that we could just use it over and over,
Oh,
because
thank
I
goodness.
was trying to do the same sort of thing in the hospital, and having to try to rewind it and rewind it was getting cumbersome.
That recording, guys, Jenn made to help soothe spirits, both of people who are getting ready to cross over and for families and caretakers around them. I played it in a place with a lot of very set and restless spirit. If you've got a haunting problem in your house, I cannot recommend that recording enough. Or if you are one of the many people that I talk to who get awakened at night because some little entity is rattling your cage and wanting attention, if you have psychic gifts, and a lot of times things are coming in when you don't, when it is an inconvenient time, that soothing recording helps calm everybody down, both you and the energies around you. I cannot recommend it enough. And I cannot tell you how many times I played it through the website. Probably makes our podcast numbers are probably going to look like they went way up because I was playing it on repeat so many times. Um, so whew, that's a little quick nugget of sort of the mood we're in from the last few weeks. As soon as we got on the podcast, Jenn had a song coming through, and Samael was talking over top of her as she started speaking about being our own ancestors, which is where we left off a few weeks ago. So here's what he had to say while Jenn was singing and before. So I wrote at the top, continuing, we are our own ancestors. And he was talking really quickly and over top of you at this part, Jenn. So I hope I got it all down. Then once you started singing, he slowed down. So that was really good. He said, energy can become scattered. Part of you may cross, part of you becomes stuck. It may not be just for the original soul, but part of another soul's work. So at this point, I'm like, what is he talking about? And then he started talking about the soul that I was endeavoring to help the other day. He said, in example, Teresa may have partially crossed, not saying this is the case. Part of her energy may have stayed here because of something he, meaning another soul that we were interacting with, needed to do as part of his work. So that's kind of a jumble. Then Jenn started singing, and you can really see the evidence of how much more clearly Samael is able to express himself during her singing. Here it comes. He says, split souls. I can be in more than one place at more than one time. Yet I know how to work from a place of wholeness. I do not need to draw energy back. Souls that had the experience of being human often do because they have experienced being split. They must ground. And at that point, I started to hyperventilate a little bit, and he went, breathe, Umshala, breathe. I have much to say on soul. A soul is not the same as how you think of a person. The soul can choose to blend and merge with the whole, or stay partially merged, or it can separate. And when he says separate, he wanted to stress there's never an entire separation. There's always a little stream of energy back to the collective source. He said, this is not how the embodied think of themselves. I am not and have never been a human. Can I be a physical force? Yes, but I have never been in a human body. I am autonomous, but I can connect. I recognize the collective as my source and go forth to do my work. You are obviously different. You are not a physical and a transcendental force at will. In order to be in a human body, to do your work, you must break yourself away nearly totally from the remembering whole, inhabit the flesh, and forget. But when you leave this short incarnation, there are many choices. You may wish to incarnate again. You may choose not to and do other work in many, and he made quotes, times and places, because we think of time and place differently, obviously, than he does. You may loop back on yourself, so to speak, or act as part of the whole. The loop back on myself thing is making my brain itch, but we'll get back to the connection you still retain to the divine may speak to you and appear to be your own ancestor. Or you may be remembering enough, be enlightened, air quotes again, enough to skip outside the body. The singer does this. So he seems to be suggesting that when you there's different ways you can sort of be your own ancestor, that a part of your energy that's still tied to the divine might come visit you or leave encouragement or hints or, and essentially it's part of the collective at any point, may even appear to you to look like you. And you might go, oh my gosh, I'm my own ancestor. It appears that but you can also, if you have gotten to a spiritual place or were born with this gift, which it appears you have, Jenn, you can actually step outside your normal timeline here. You're not as constrained by the idea of time and space as most other humans are. And in doing that, both visit energy that you used or will use and at the energy that you're cluing into from the whole in different ways. And in doing that, you are your own ancestor because there's always so it appears that like we have this idea that I am Tava, I am in this body, this is what I do today. That's the end of it. But there's always this thread that goes back. And the way that we use our consciousness in this body is, and the gifts that we happen to have in this body is going to make a difference. So you are able to do this thing where you're kind of like, yeah, time and space are nice, but whatever, whatever. I got stuff to do. And, I don't know if that's like my old New York man voice or whatever it is. Because as far as I know, you're not from New York and you're not an old man, at least in this incarnation. I don't know what that was, but I suddenly feel like I'm on the Muppet Show. So it's been a trippy week, people. There's random ghosts anyway. So, but it appears that you have the ability to kind of go, time and space aren't that big of a deal to me. And you are actually manipulating your energy to act a little bit more like how Samael moves his energy. The difference will be that because you are in an embodied form right now, when you do that, you're going to have to ground and like consciously pull your energy back in at times where you might become so super scattered that you can't function in your body. And that's when we start disassociating and needing headaches and getting overwhelmed and getting exhausted. It's suddenly you turn to the left and there's some dude from 4 centuries before playing the banjo. Like we know how it goes, right? But this is something that you can do. But there's apparently full of different ways to be your own ancestor, so to speak. And then, so he talks about, or to skip outside the body, the singer does this. he just said now off to the side, and she feasts. And I think that's a reference to you. You always eat in a lot of those experiences
Oh,
or
yes.
consume something. I'm just going to put a little note in here. And she feasts. And he's laughing. And she feasts. Okay. And then he says to
Usually on
me,
really undesirable things.
there have been a couple that I were like the one of the ones from the hospital. I will not go into it in detail. Yeah, there was
Yeah,
that
I
one when I
actually,
was
the
like,
first time I ever really said no, I can't do that. And I feel like I didn't get a lot of pushback from that for what that one. It was like, okay, we'll give you this one. We won't make you swallow that.
we won't
Like,
make you
thank you.
swallow
We'll find a new way.
medical things. Yeah. Um, so then he said, in your work, Umsala, which, dear listeners, it appears is trying to find ways to soothe the dead. In your work, Umshala, know that sometimes a nearly whole soul leaves or crosses over, or part stays, either to continue work or because it has become lost or for the benefit of others. So, this benefit of others, this was crossing back to the stuff he was saying at the beginning where I was really confused. He was trying to say to me that if I encounter a ghost, the ghost may not be an entire soul. It may be a residual energy. It may be that part of the soul has crossed over or is in a different timeline or is doing something else, or part of that energy is conscious but staying behind to be of benefit either to someone who is still living or to the work of someone, another entity that is disembodied. So, what he's trying to say to me, so the situation that I dealt with the other day, I had a very distressed spirit, and I had a spirit in a different place that appeared to be looking for them, but unable to contact them. We'll call it Spirit A, female distressed spirit, who was kind of just cycling and lost and hysterical. And then we had Spirit B, a gentleman spirit who kept coming back to this realm to try to entice Spirit A to calm down and come with him. Spirit A could not get out of the loop. And so, what I was trying to do was calm her down and get her to a place where he might be able to contact her and carry on what he needed to do. What Samael is pointing out, I assumed she's lost. He's coming for her benefit. What Samael is pointing out is that that same situation might look like that at times, but perhaps Spirit A is part of a soul that is in that state as part of their work so that Spirit B can come back and help. Perhaps Spirit B needs to learn to help or has unresolved feelings where they need to be of benefit to Spirit A. That it's not just necessarily Spirit B and me, we're helping out Spirit A. It might look like that from the outside. This may have actually been, in some situations, a choice of Spirit A so that Spirit B could learn or experience something that they needed to experience for their development, which made me go, boom.
Yeah, that is fascinating. There are so many things in that that are really hugely important and impactful. And the idea too that, when we encounter spirits, it's not the entire being, because there's so many things, and we've had so much talk about death and crossing over and what happens and how you end up here and how you end up, in these higher realms where things are more blissful and different. And it's interesting. And I think for me, it's comforting, the idea that it sounds like in not in any of those did he say that the whole soul stays. Is
He
that correct? Or
well, he
sometimes
says
there are times when the entire soul is stays.
days, but it still always has that thread back to the divine. It always will still have that craving to return. Just sometimes it can't find it. He's talking a little bit more now. He says, what you call the ego, sometimes a part can move on, but the part associated with the ego stays. And he's not speaking of ego to be like, oh, you have a huge ego. I think, and we know this, there's so many people out there who have experiences like this. I think I've told this story before on the podcast of a friend I had in high school, and her grandmother, after her grandmother passed away, kept appearing there. They were currently in a custody battle for a child, and grandma basically hung out until they successfully were able to get custody of this child and the family who needed them. And then grandma crossed over. So if we look at it from that standpoint, it might not have been all of grandma here that we were seeing at that point. Now, all of grandma could have gone over and then come back to visit. All of grandma, but what grandma might also have done was leave the part of her was concerned with earthly affairs here to get that work resolved, while another part of her went ahead and went back to the Remembering Collective. And she was still offering her support. Samael's trying to say that this idea we have that, and oh my God, and I just want to say that we are not any one thing. And what does he say? All the time. No one is any one thing. We're so used to thinking of ourselves of this is where my skin ends. Or even if we go beyond that to go, this is where the heat from my body ends. This is where my influence ends. This is where my voice ends. We still think of ourselves as inhabiting a rather small space. And he's trying to tell us that there are lots of entities, him included, that they can be in multiple places at once, as we definitely saw while you were on your trip, Jenn. He'd be
Yeah.
here with me and out there on the other coast with you and doing whatever else he needed to do. He doesn't have that, those constraints are not part of his being. We very much think of them as ours because we have to in order to understand what it is to be embodied. That we need to understand that once we are not contained in this vessel anymore, there are lots of options and lots of choices. And if we try to look at them in a normal time space, I am an embodied person framework, we're going to miss out on all of the other options that might help us to understand, whoa, I can be my own ancestor. This was one of the things that was blowing my mind the other day when I was thinking about, as I kept encountering ghosts, is my first thought was, oh no, they're all trapped here. They're not. Most of them are choosing to stay here. Now, some of them may be in a loop or maybe in hysterical and may need to be calmed down. Some of them were trying to do work, but were having great difficulty doing so because of a ton of chaotic energy around them that needed to be soothed before they could keep, sort of like you turn on a loud rock music in a crowded office. Nobody can focus and do what they're supposed to do. And so my job was to go in and sort of turn down the AC/DC so that they could think straight and do what, and function the way they're intended to function. But yeah, there's this whole idea that Samael can be in multiple places at once. And we have that ability when we're outside of this body. It's just we experience consciousness and being differently because we have been in a body. We know what it's like to be split almost completely off from the whole.
Yeah, and there's a lot, when you think about it, we do a lot of like practicing leaving our bodies and doing work in other realms. In this class that I just finished with Robert Moss on active dreaming, he's talking about, that in dreams, we travel outside of our bodies every night. Every time we're sleeping and we're dreaming, we're traveling and we're doing real work in real realms. And that sometimes there's something that's just, maybe we're really exhausted and it's just sort of, I don't know, brain exhaust or things that come out. Or sometimes it may be more symbolic, but that there are a good portion of our dreams that are actually traveling to other places, to other realms, doing work, learning things. And so I'm thinking we do that automatically, like everybody does that. And then, people can learn to remote view and astral travel where their consciousness doesn't entirely leave their body. There's still a connection to their body, and they're able to use their consciousness to go and experience and see or observe or affect something at a distance. And then it sounds like when we leave this physical body entirely, we can do that to a much more dramatic extent and have entire parts of us that are in different realms or still here on earth or doing certain kinds of work. It's interesting when he was talking about enlightened and using that with air quotes, it really struck me what the parts of that word are, the like enlightened. And I was thinking so much of the work that we've been talking about doing and that we're planning on facilitating in another week is this laying down of the burdens. And actually, I'm realizing too, so one of the things that Michael actually asked Samael to tell me through Tava this past week was that I needed to connect with the hymns of my childhood that really resonated. And there was one in particular, which was the Old Rugged Cross, that for some reason as a child, I just loved, which is an odd one for a small child to be enamored with. But that's also about laying, like, your burdens being laid down, and that you leave your burdens here and then you can go and exchange them for a crown is basically what it says. And I'm thinking, we're talking about laying your burdens down and becoming lighter. And it really strikes me that enlightened is laying down more of those things that are of the world, those false beliefs, those things that we buy into, the cultural expectations, the societal expectations, the familial expectations that tell us we are limited and we are finite and we are less than and we are not worthy and all those things. And the more of those we lay down, the lighter we get. And that it literally holds our spirit down, sometimes to the extent that it can be kind of stuck here for a period of time and without the awareness of its infinite abilities, its connection to the whole, and how it's really just, my mind is kind of exploding as I realize how all of these threads are tying in together with the laying our burdens down and the ego. And we talk about that in Reiki classes, and that from the perspective of Holy Fire, that the ego is really our culturally created self, the self that helps our soul, which is infinite, be able to function in a physical world. It's like that part of us that shows us, okay, this is how you basically exist in a society. This is how a family works. This is how these kind of structures that are a part of our physical existence, that the ego is really meant to be that part of us that allows us to figure out how something that is a more infinite sort of essence can come in and exist in a physicalized, more limited sort of state. But that our ego tends to, when we buy into all of that too much, then it's no longer a way that we're able to function as a soul in a physical body, but it's something that becomes more like this hardened shell like armor that stops us from being able to really even recognize the infinite nature of our soul. And so the more we do our work, and this has been really driven home to us in this last couple weeks of all of the things that are happening, both in my personal life, things that have been that Tava's been experiencing, and all of the overlap between, is that the need to do our work while we're here so that we don't have that work that we have to do necessarily so much after. And I know one of the things that came through Samael in this past time was your work is the helping those who have crossed over to be soothed and to find their way home and to get and to do their work. And that part of our work, that Keith and I work, is to help people to do that work while they're here in a body so that they are lighter, they are more enlightened, they are lighter, and their souls can more easily travel and make those choices more consciously instead of being in a place of disorientation. And I realize, I don't think we've shared this in the podcast, but one of the things you were talking about is that the reason why humans, and I'll let you actually speak to this, the reason why it is that a human who has crossed over might need a human to help them with their work, because I always felt like, well, aren't there angels? Isn't Samael there? Why aren't they doing this work? And it was really hard for me to understand that. And that was something, I'll let you explain that, because I think that might help some of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you before I answer that question, as you were talking about lightening things, he said, very good. She speaks of a dive into the hidden places. And then I said something about the hidden places. You said enlightened. And he says, no one knows the word in darkened, inshallah. So that's, my brain immediately went to light. I think you're right. And I don't think we've mentioned this on the podcast. So this would be really good. If there are angels and there are ancestors and there are all of these people to help out souls who might be agitated or lost and need an environment change or some encouragement or just some soothing, why the heck aren't the angels or some other big, powerful being doing that? And one of the things that Samael said about this is that imagine that you die suddenly. Okay. Like you're in your body 1 minute, your car gets wrapped around a telephone pole. You have a couple terrifying moments at the end of your life, or maybe not even that. And suddenly, boom, you're gone, right? You're not in your physical body anymore. It's not a choice because that physical body can't sustain you, right? And suddenly you're outside of it and you are trying to process what has happened to me. The world looks different. And perhaps there's a gateway or a doorway or something there, but you are so upset and so distressed and confused that you can't see it. Or you can see it and you're just scared. And what Samael was saying was that sometimes if people have had a long time to prepare for death, they are spiritual people who are open to the idea of things outside this realm. If an angel shows up next to you, an energetic or a powerful energetic being, you're like, okay, I've had some time to think about this. I'm good. Like I might not be happy about it, but I'm good. And you're ready to go home. If you are in a state where you were nowhere near ready to go home and you've never conceived of the idea that there might be ghosts and spirits and angels or whatever, and suddenly there is an entity of incredible power that you have never even fathomed could exist before next to you, your response might simply be to freak out, right? You might not be able to listen. You might be wary of following. Think about if you have grown up in a culture or a faith that talks about the devil coming to get your soul, right? You might go, ah. go at anybody or with anybody. You don't know what's happening. And Samael said these spirits can get themselves in such a twist that oftentimes it might not be beneficial for a being of much greater sort of energetic presence to show up because it might only worsen the situation. And so in that case, having a human, because really, if you've just been sucked out of your body and nobody is responding to you when you try to talk to them, and you are worried about your family and you're traumatized, if there is a human who looks at you and says, "Hey, I can hear you," you're like, "Oh, thank goodness. Oh, thank goodness," right? You know what a human is. You can conceive of that. Having that human there is an intermediary to be sort of a first contact for you and say, let's try to calm down a little bit. Who are you? What's going on? Are you aware that you are no longer in your body? I mean, and just presenting that information may stir them up again, but it's a gentler step. And so there are those of us that have work like this to do where we're sort of the hi, I'm Samael's advance woman. I'm his secretary, Tava. Let me just get some basic information from you before I pass you on to an angel. And that was exactly what happened earlier this week was actually some other people encountered a soul that was so agitated she couldn't understand that there were other souls and other entities around her. She was just wrapped up in her fear. And I was able to converse with her. She was really glad somebody could hear her. She wanted me to turn the lights on in the room that we were in. And we got her to a place, myself and the two people who were working with me, where she felt held and safe enough and secure that we could then start to talk to her about the fact of like where she was and what was going on and what her options were as we saw them. And that not only helped her, but she was stirring up so much energy in the area that she was agitating other spirits. So we were just trying to bring the whole room down. Sort of like when you have a classroom of rowdy children and then somebody like rings a little bell or just the thing where they put their fingers in the air and everybody's energy just kind of settles so that you can move forward. So that's why an embodied soul might be needed to assist.
Yeah, thank you. I think that that's really helpful because that was always a big thing for me was why aren't there angels doing this or why have they been just left behind? And Samuel was saying no, there's always an option, but yeah, the idea of the presence of something really and I that the having being in a body and knowing and inviting it, the presence of an angel, it's a strong energy. It is a really powerful, strong, wonderful energy, but if you don't know what that is, they would be even more disorienting and scary. So yeah, having that like
Yeah.
introduction of, hey, so you can trust this, you can trust this being. It only has your highest good. And, you can think about it, but just saying you might want to reconsider or be open to more options.
I mean, Jen, if you think about, I'm sure you remember after the first visit I ever had from Samael, I remember sitting on your sofa at your house saying, do I like need to go to the emergency room? Like, what's wrong with me? Like,
It's
I
like, am
mean,
I crazy
see,
or
yeah, like, do you need to take me and just put me somewhere where I can get some help? And that was overwhelming to me. And I wasn't dying on top of it. If you're dying on top of it and you're dealing with pain and loss and worry, you may just need a little gentler assist.
Yeah, and I'm amazed at how many people I hear their stories and how many thought that like when they started experiencing these things that were outside of our cultural norms and seeing spirits or hearing divine beings speaking to them or seeing auras or soul colors or all of these different kinds of things, or having an angel show up and talking to them, or how many of them had real concerns about their sanity, and in some cases had people in their environment that were trying to get them committed because they were like, there's something wrong. Like Donna Eden, who's now world famous for her abilities. Apparently her original husband was fearful and was like, you need help, you need serious help. And thankfully she knew that she didn't. But it's amazing how, and sometimes, and that's not as huge as having suddenly passed, not even maybe realizing your past, and having something like that show up that's so far outside of your understanding. It's amazing. Just each of all of our baby steps in this process are things that can really throw people for a loop and go, whoa, wait a minute. And if it weren't for having, a tribe of other people, it's interesting. We were playing this game called Worst Case Scenario, which we're actually going to have to get because it's really hilarious. And basically there are 5 cards that you have to lay out that each have all of these like catastrophic kinds of things in most cases. And you have to decide what's the worst and what's the like absolute worst. And so it goes from like bad to like the absolute worst. And one of the cards was, you're the only person in the world who can see and hear spirits. Oh. And in my categorization of things, that was the worst, because I was thinking there would be no validation, no support to help you know that you weren't losing it. There wasn't something wrong with you, but that this was a real thing. And there wouldn't really be anybody you could tell, because if no one else in the world had that experience, there would be no common understanding of it. And so I kind of think of it a little bit like that, where it's like that, if somebody has no idea that these things exist, it's a bigger shock the further removed you have lived your life from the idea that these kinds of things exist. It's not so surprising. To ensure that we end part 1 of this podcast in a good grounded place, I will kind of sing us into a space of groundedness. Thank you all so much for being a part of this incredible journey. I look forward to continuing this in the next podcast. So until next time, be blessed.